Hi, it's Sherry. Welcome back to Canterbury Cottage. Can you guys believe it's November already? And you know what that means. It's time to head to the basement, the attic, the garage, or wherever your holiday decor is stored. But before I lug out my Rubbermaid totes, I decided to create some new holiday decor. I went thrift shopping last week and came home with 15 items that I thought I could turn into great holiday decor. So today I'm going to show you how I upcycled and styled all those thrifted finds. Today I partnered with the absolute best interior designer on YouTube, Sarah of She Holds Dearly. I've been watching Sarah's channel for a couple of years, and she is just a beautiful lady with exquisite taste and wonderful ideas on decorating and bringing vintage style into your home. Today's video is part of her popular series, Styling Thrifted Decor, where she shows you how she uses thrifted items often in unexpected ways, in her gorgeous 1906 farmhouse. So I hope you'll check out her channel when you're done here. I'll link her video in the description box below. Well, I have a lot I want to show you today, so let's get started. I recently found a vintage set of Tinker Toys for only $3. There weren't many wood parts left inside, so I didn't feel bad about turning it into Christmas decor. To create one taller tree, I took 2 Dollar Tree Christmas trees and removed the plastic stand at the bottom, and then I cut the bottom section off of one of the trees. Using pliers on the large section that I had cut off, I squeezed the pipe closed so that it would fit inside the pipe of the full tree. I added a little super glue inside the pipe of the full tree before adding the additional branches. I cut a bit off of some of the bottom branches to reestablish the cone shape of the tree. I took the tree outside and lightly sprayed it with some white spray paint, and then I packed the Tinker Toy container with some recycled styrofoam. I inserted the tree in the styrofoam and added a little hot glue for extra stability. Then I began turning the Tinker Toys themselves into ornaments. First, I inserted hot glue into one of the holes and then inserted a small loop of twine into the hot glue to create a hanger. And then I hot glued various ribbons around the outside of each wood piece. I chose to use ribbon in primary colors to match the Tinker Toy box. There was one large wood ball. I covered most of the holes on it with gold stars and put it on the top of the tree. I didn't want to waste the lid, so I drilled a hole in it for hanging purposes, and then I cut up some of the Tinker Toy sticks and hot glued them to the lid in the shape of a star. To maintain the vintage vibe, I just covered up the styrofoam with a little pillow stuffing. How cute is this for a small child's bedroom? The next item is technically not Christmas decor, but when I saw this vintage dresser at Goodwill for only $50, I had to bring it home. I'm tired of painting everything white, and I'm loving stained brown wood again. So all I did was find a good spot for it and give it a thorough cleaning. The top 2 drawers wouldn't close all the way, but with some additional dusting, I discovered that there was nothing mechanically wrong with those 2 drawers. The previous owners had left me a few treasures, including a rock. I always pick up brass candlesticks when I see them at the thrift store, especially when they're only $2. During the holidays, I love grouping a bunch of them together for impact. I'm also always on the lookout for vintage books at a good price. I came across these red and green ones for only $1 each, and I grabbed them to use in Christmas displays. I am shocked by the number of people that donate their handmade afghans. So when I went thrifting last week, it was not hard to find one with red to match my traditional Christmas decor. Personally, I think a handmade afghan is much nicer than a mass-produced throw blanket. Speaking of store-bought blankets, I bought this one for $1.99 and decided to turn it into a tree skirt. I folded the blanket in fourths and pinned a small strand of twine to the center corner. I attached a piece of chalk to the opposite end and drew an arc-shaped line to cut along. I cut through the first layer of blanket and then used the edge as my guide to cut through the other layers. There was a little stitching within my circle connecting the front and back fabrics, which I ripped out with a seam ripper in less than 5 minutes. I used a tape measure to determine the center of my circle, and then I used a Tupperware bowl to draw a small circle within my large circle. I also drew a straight line from the edge of the fabric to the center circle, and then I cut that line and cut out the center circle. With the pretty sides of the fabric facing each other, I pinned up all of the edges, and then I took it to my sewing machine and sewed up all of the edges, leaving one hole big enough for my hand to fit through. I turned the fabric right side out, and then I stitched the hole closed. But you could hot glue the hole closed if you prefer. You don't need to add any ties, just overlap one end of the fabric over the other end to create a custom fit around your tree. I created 3 different looks out of one $2 blanket from a thrift store. And the best part is, it's machine washable. I had a little bit of the tree skirt fabric left and decided to make some red velvet mittens. I drew out a mitten shape on a piece of paper and then used that paper as a pattern to cut out my fabric. With the velvety sides of fabric together, I stitched up the edges, leaving the bottom of the mitten open. I turned the mittens right side out and then cut a strip of the fake fur long enough to go around the top of the mitten. Again, with the right sides of fabric together, I hot glued the strip of fake fur along the open end of the mitten, and then hot glued the 2 ends of fake fur together. Flip the fur up and then fold the top edge in and hot glue it down. I put a little pillow stuffing in each mitten to give it some shape. I thought I might want to hang these mittens, and so I punched a hole through the fake fur with an X-Acto knife and then ran some twine through it to create a loop that I could hang it from. To finish it off, I added a few stems of fake greenery and a bow. Sometimes when I thrift items, I do something completely different than what I originally had in mind. Like with this popcorn bowl. I sanded off the red paint and gave it a coat of green chalk paint, planning on using it as a base for a small tree. When the paint was dry, I lightly distressed it with 220 grit sandpaper and then applied a light coat of Waverly Clear wax. I had some birchwood scrapbook paper left from a previous project and cut it out to fit the bottom of the popcorn bowl. I sprayed the bottom of the bowl with some spray adhesive and then pressed in my paper. I had to splice two pieces together because I didn't have one scrap that was large enough. I wanted the bottom of the bowl to look nice because I was propping it on its side on a chair in my kitchen. Then I just added decor items that I had on hand: a wicker birdhouse, branches cut from an old Christmas tree, pine cones from my yard, some Dollar Tree decor balls, and a string of beads made from a wood-beaded seat cover. I sprinkled on a little fake snow and added a small string of lights in the birdhouse. I recently picked up a vintage stick horse at a consignment store for $15. To make it look more like Christmas decor, I decided to add some jingle bells. I cut the buckle off of a belt left over from a previous project. Then I cut the opposite end of the belt into a triangle shape, hot glued jingle bells to it, and ran some ribbon through the loop of leather at the top so that I could hang it from the horse. I also made a rag bow from strips of ribbon, which I attached to the top of the belt. With woodland decor so popular right now, I was surprised to come across this deer plaque at the thrift store. Although the design looks like metal, it's actually plastic, and it was in desperate need of a color change. First, I sprayed it with Zinsser primer, and then I brushed on 2 coats of white chalk paint. When the paint was dry, I distressed it with 220 grit sandpaper. I wanted to dress up the plaque by putting it in a frame, but it was a little too large, so I had to cut the plaque down a bit on my table saw to fit in the frame properly. I added a couple of picture frame braces on the back to hold the plaque in place and added a sawtooth hanger. Look at the before and after. It is amazing what a little paint can do. This gold lantern stand was intended to hold a taper candle, but I wanted to use it for something else. And so I used pliers to bend the metal parts intended to hold the candle back and forth until they snapped off. And then I gave it 2 coats of black spray paint. I put some fake snow in a glass jar that I had previously thrifted. You could buy a small bird nest or make one like I did out of angel vine and sheet moss. I put it in the jar, and then I decided to add a little Spanish moss as well. I stuck a skewer stick in the bottom of a fake bird and then cut the stick down. and then I ran it through the bird nest to hold the bird in place. I added some jingle bells and some greenery to the bird nest, and then I hot glued the glass jar to the lantern stand. I used florist wire to attach some pine cones to the lantern, and then used a combination of wire and hot glue to fill in between the pine cones with fake pine stems. To give it a snowy effect, I applied some spray adhesive to the greenery and then sprinkled on some fake snow. To finish it off, I added a big bow and some fairy lights. When I bought this metal piece, I thought it was a two-piece bifold design, so I was shocked to learn that it had 4 sides. This certainly changed my plans. I gave it a fresh coat of white paint, and then I added some greenery at the top near the bird using florist wire. I also wired on some small pine cones and a bow that I made. I applied some spray adhesive to the greenery and the pine cones and then sprinkled on some fake snow. You could use this stand to hold any number of things: Christmas cards, ornaments, even stockings. I thought I would create a coffee and hot cocoa bar using some vintage thermoses that I already owned and some red bowls and spoons that I picked up at Goodwill last week. At first, I created an image to make a small sign, but then decided to paint over the chicken picture that was already hanging there with some chalkboard paint. I applied 2 coats of chalkboard paint and let it dry overnight before writing on it with chalk. I decided to make a banner out of a thrifted scarf I had purchased for previous projects. To keep the size consistent, I made a pattern in the shape of a triangle from a piece of paper. I just folded the top of each triangle over a piece of twine and hot glued it down. The twine was cut to the length I needed for my space. Then I just added some Dollar Tree stickers to spell out Merry Christmas. Well, if you were counting, you may have noticed I only presented 14 thrifted items. That's because the 15th item is this apron that I'm wearing. I got this cute thing for just $1.99. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you'll go over and check out Sarah's channel for even more ideas on using and styling your thrifted finds. Well, it's time to head to the basement and drag out those Rubbermaid totes. I hope you'll come back next week and see what I do with all the goodies that I find. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye for now.